move under my feet. I feel the sky tumbling down, tumbling down.
I feel the earth move under my feet.
I feel the
Sky tumbling down, tumbling down. Oh, we're now going to begin a chapter on the Earth, the dynamic Earth, and we'll talk about plate tectonics. Now, usually we think of the Earth as being solid. We talk about solid as the Earth beneath our feet, but we'll learn that the Earth is very dynamic, that things happen, things move under our feet. Now, sometimes that movement can be very slow, centimeters per year, but in other cases we can have very explosive events that happen, and we'll talk about these in this chapter. In this chapter, the type of movements that we will talk about include volcanoes, earthquakes, geysers. That's not geysers. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking of some old geyser, but no, geysers. And erosion. Each of these is an important type of movement of the Earth that can have dramatic effects. Let's first talk about volcanoes, which are probably the most dramatic type of movement of the Earth that we can talk about. Volcanoes, of course, are formations that can erupt and spew out lava and ash and gases, and these can be very destructive. If we just talk about a few, Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD, a volcano that you've probably heard about. Mount Vesuvius is on the western coast of Italy, and when it erupted in 79 AD, it completely destroyed the city of Pompeii and Herculaneum and other small towns in that region. You've probably talked about this in history classes and may have even seen grisly photographs of bodies that were completely uncovered by the ash spewed from this volcano. In fact, it's estimated the thermal energy output from Mount Vesuvius was as much as 100,000 times the energy output of the Hiroshima nuclear bomb. So it was a tremendous explosion when Mount Vesuvius erupted. This shows an artist's depiction, the larger drawing of the explosion or the eruption of Mount Vesuvius and the nearby town of Pompeii. And the bottom picture actually is a present-day photograph of the city of Naples and Mount Vesuvius right behind it. So it makes you wonder why people decide to rebuild right by volcanoes. Another one is Mount St. Helens, and this is one that's more recent in 1980 and in the United States. Mount St. Helens in the western states of the United States. And this shows you two photographs of Mount St. Helens. One is before the top, and the second is an after photograph taken from about the same point of view, showing that essentially when Mount St. Helens erupted, it blew its top. It completely blew the top of the mountain away. It was the most destructive volcano that has erupted in the continental United States. Whereas Mount Vesuvius, the eruption resulted in, it's estimated, 16,000 deaths. In Mount St. Helens, there was only about 57 people killed. But while only 57 people may have been killed in the eruption of Mount St. Helens, it did have an economic impact in those states. An even more recent volcano that erupted in 2010 was Eyjafjallajökull, or let's just say it was the volcano in Iceland that erupted in 2010. And maybe we need some help in the pronunciation of Eyjafjallajökull, of this volcano. And so we'll turn to our friend Thor for a little help in the pronunciation.
So I wanted to address the issue that is the pronunciation of the Icelandic volcano that has just erupted and destroyed Europe. for all of you that are wondering how to pronounce it, I've seen a couple of videos from medias that are actually asking Icelanders to go out and pronounce the name of the volcano so they can at least try to pronounce it right. So here it goes. It's Eyjafjallajökull. That's Eyjafjallajökull. So the two L's in the end you don't say it like a T, like someone was suggesting. It's not Jökull or Jökull, it's Jökull. So you do a so it's Eyjafjallajökull. I hope some of you can use that to your advantage. In other news, nothing. Oh, goodbye.
Thanks, Thor, for the help in the pronunciation of the volcano. Eyjafjallajökull, the Iceland volcano. Eyjafjallajökull occurred in the age of Vimeo and YouTube, so there have been YouTube postings of the eruption of this volcano and the aftermath of this volcano. Before showing you these videos, let me point out that the destruction caused by this volcano was primarily economic. They had to close down the airports in 20 European countries for about a week or so due to the fact that they couldn't fly airplanes because of the output of ash and material spewed by this volcano would actually damage jet engines. So it completely grounded air flight into Europe for a week or more. In the videos that I'm going to show you, first of all, you'll have one where you have some guy, very brave, going up and really taking sort of close-up views of lava flows. But then you'll have a more artistic video with a little Icelandic music. But notice a couple of things in the second video. One you'll notice is that the melting of the water, when it would flow into the volcano, would vaporize essentially upon flowing into the mouth of the volcano. Secondly, you'll see a down airplane, and you can see the result of all of the pellets that are spewed from this volcano and how they just sort of tore up the airplane and causing it to crash. Okay, let's watch the video. How was that? Now, an even more recent eruption occurring in early part of 2014 was Mount Sinabung in Indonesia. And the eruption of this volcano caused the displacement of 20,000 people who lived in this densely populated area. Now, the reason for talking about Mount Sinabung is because it is part of what is called the Ring of Fire. Anytime I can make a reference to Johnny Cash, you can probably tell by now that I will.
I fell into a burning ring of fire. I went down, 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 and the flames went higher. And it burns, burns, burns.
Okay.
The ring of fire.
So what do we mean by the Ring of Fire? The Pacific Ring of Fire, or the Ring of Volcanoes around the Pacific Ocean. Well, if you'll notice, if we start around New Zealand, we can see that these little black triangles represent volcanoes. And as we can see, they sort of form a ring. If we start from New Zealand and go into Indonesia, the Philippines, and then come up the side of China, and then through Japan, and then we go through the Aleutian Islands, and then down the western coast of North America and the United States into Central America, and then down through South America through the Andes Mountains, that we essentially form a ring. Now, we will see in the next lecture or so an explanation for why we have this ring of fire, why we have this region which we have so many active volcanoes. Earthquakes are also very destructive, and the thing about earthquakes is that we're not quite sure where they're going to occur. We know where the volcanoes are, and so if the people in Naples, Italy decide to build their homes right by the volcano, they know what chances they're taking. But with earthquakes, they seem to happen in various places. We're never quite sure when they're going to occur or exactly where they're going to occur. Let me give you a few examples of very important earthquakes. In 1906, we had the San Francisco earthquake, which was very destructive, but even more recently, in 1989, in San Francisco, actually it was Loma Prieta is where it was centered, but that's near San Francisco. There was an earthquake that occurred right before the broadcast of the third game of a World Series between Oakland and San Francisco. So it's one that really captured the attention of people. And the photograph at the bottom shows some of the damage that occurred to a bridge in San Francisco, the Bay Bridge. The most destructive earthquake, and in fact the deadliest natural disaster ever recorded, occurred in 2004 when there was an earthquake in the Indian Ocean resulting in a tsunami that killed 230,000 people living on the western side of Indonesia and also Sri Lanka and Thailand. So this shows that earthquakes can be extremely deadly. In this case, it was deadly because it produced a tsunami, a giant wave of water 30 meters high that swept across the coast of these islands. Even more recently, there was an earthquake off of the coast of Japan, 2011, which also resulted in a tsunami, 15,000 deaths, so not as many deaths as in the Indian Ocean tsunami. But you probably know it damaged the Fukushima nuclear reactor, which led to some very tense times in which they worried about a meltdown of this nuclear reactor. Now, you'll notice that by each of these, I have a number. 7.8 for the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, 6.9 for the World Series earthquake, 8.9 for the one that produced the tremendous tsunami in the Indian Ocean, 9.0 for the more recent Japanese earthquake. These are values of what is called the Richter scale, which is a scale going from 1 to 10. It's a logarithmic scale that is a measure of the intensity of the earthquake. Being a logarithmic scale, a 7 is 100 times more energetic than a 5. An 8 is 10 times more energetic than a 7. So they're a log scale. Every unit on a log scale is a factor of 10. The strongest earthquake ever recorded was a 9.5 in Chile in 1960. Okay, we're going to pause now, and you'll be asked a few questions as usual to answer before proceeding on to the next video. In the next video, we'll try to talk more about what has actually happened. What is the basis for earthquakes in volcanoes? And we'll see that it has to do with something called plate tectonics. And that will give us some basis for understanding these movements of planet Earth that occur on various time scales, from either very slow, gradual movements, the growth of mountains, for example, to very explosive reactions, earthquakes, and volcanic eruptions. And we'll leave you with a little bit more of the Ring of Fire. The taste.
I fell into a burning ring of fire. I went down, 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 and the flames went higher. And it burns, burns, burns. The ring of fire, the ring of fire. The taste of love is sweet when hearts like ours meet.